Hello everyone, today let's have a look at the thought process everyone needs to have if they want to become the most profitable player they can be. For this, let's have a look at the hand that I played today against a recreational player 200 big blinds deep. However, let's look at it from the recreational point of view. So he was on the button holding pocket eights and I was on the big blind and checked to him on this flop. And he decided to go for a check back despite the c-bet being, of course, very standard here. Why did he go for a check back? Maybe he has an idea of blockers and thought he blocks my pair of eights. Maybe he just felt like trapping. Whatever the reason, all we know is he checked back. On the turn, he faced a 250% bet size. So this is a large overbet, which is quite common, or at least in theory, quite the size you should be using on this ace. If you don't understand why, you can ask me, I'll reply later. Fact is that he faced this bet and someone who was feeling like trapping on the flop, checking back, on the turn, as expected, was going to call this hand instead of finding a raise that Wizard is finding here in this sim. On the river, on the jack, I decided to go for a bet. It wasn't precisely 3x pot like here, it's just the size that is available on Wizard. It was slightly smaller, but this is the size more or less that he faced. And what option does he have? Fold, out of the question with his sets of 8. Does he call or does he go for the jam? A good player would know this is an easy jam, but very common for recreational players sometimes is they seem to get afraid to raise unless they have the absolute nuts, and he went for a call here. It's a terrible decision. However, let me ask you this. Is the call a profitable play or is the call not profitable? With this simplistic point of view, you can see the answer here by the EV. He won a lot of EV, so the call was profitable. However, does this mean that the call was great because it was profitable? No, because this game is not about finding a profitable decision. It is about finding the most profitable decision, and raising clearly would have been better. Why didn't he think of raising? Common for a recreational player, even though not always as common in this exact spot. He lacked understanding of what my range looks like. Of course, I don't have pocket aces and pocket jacks here because I raised that pre-flop. That is an easy 3-bet. So his hand was effectively the strongest hand possible. But now let's change the point of view and see the hand that I had, pocket sixes here on the turn, and see a common mistakes for regular players. So the recreational player, he was not understanding what my range looked like because either he forgot to think that 3-bet I 3-bet aces or jacks, or he just even doesn't know it. You, in more complicated spots, I'm sure sometimes depending on the action, you think your opponent may have some hands he doesn't even have because you don't consider the complete action. So you need to consider the complete action. But there's something else. Here on the turn, you remember I chose the 250% bet size. What is a simplistic point of view or thought process, sorry, that many of you may have? You may think, I have a very strong hand. I want to get value. Is it profitable to bet? Yeah, is it profitable to bet large? Of course, you could call me with the aces and you go for the 250% bet size like I did here. I thought a little bit more about this, but maybe you just do it in a simplistic way. And then you see, okay, Wizard is d'accord, we could use a big size. However, we could have also used a check. Why did I not think about the check? Maybe you did. Maybe you thought, okay, maybe I let him bet and go for a check raise. So you compared the EV of check raising with the EV of just immediately going for the huge overbet and thought that the overbet is better for some reason. However, is that thought process enough? Let's have a look what happened after we check. Had we checked back, we could have expected a bet around maybe a 3/4 size because it's not very typical for recreational players to bet very large. And then you would have gone for the check raise as you planned. Maybe for the raise 17.8 size here is what you planned. And then you see, wait, Wizard is giving me another option. If I check, I don't automatically have to go for the check raise. I could also go for the check call. And then what happens on the river? You check to your opponent again and will face another bet. And after you face another bet, you will have the option to check raise. What I'm pointing out here is that you on the turn as the first to act would have likely had a thought process of something like, how large can I go? What is profitable to bet here? I think the overbet is profitable. Maybe you would have compared to the check raise and possibly the check raise is more profitable. but very likely weren't thinking about the whole range of possibilities that you could also go for a check call on the turn and then a check raise on the river. Our goal in this game is to always find the most profitable action. How can you find the most profitable action if you are not thinking ahead and already planning what can happen until the end of the hand to then decide what the most profitable action will be? Let's look at one more common thought process mistake from recreational players and then from regulars. And by the way, this takes a lot of time and experience to always think ahead and know your options. Not always in game will you have the time to think this thoroughly through. And this is why before you play, while you study, you make your game plan and already predict that in these situations against this type of player, you prefer to go for check raises, for check calls, etc. If you, while studying, are aware of all the possibilities that can happen in a game and know how people tend to play them, you will in game quickly recognize what you should be doing. But now let's start here with the recreational player. What does a recreational player here mistakenly think? Sometimes, not always of course, but you've seen this, everyone has seen this. They cold call pocket aces here, and this is a terrible mistake. What do they think? I'm going to trap here like this. I keep his weak hands there, queen 9 off, and then maybe he hits a queen with his queen and I get money out of his top pair. However, this is only part of it. He's not thinking it through, yeah, but maybe I have pocket queens here on the cutoff, and well, if I 3-bet I make a lot of money against it, but if I just cold call and the board comes ace and king, I won't make money from the queens. So if you just think at one thing and think, this sounds good, I'm going to do it, you're not thinking enough, because it's not about finding one thing that sounds good. It's about comparing all things and finding which is best. And raising clearly is better than calling. Now an example that applies to you as a regular. Most of you know that I'm primarily a player and only coach on the side, so let's put it this way. I've been grinding a lot this year, but I'm making this video especially because I'm reminding myself of the sessions this week with a few students, and we had some similar topics. Many of you like MDA. MDA, when I started coaching, I had many starts, but it wasn't as commonly available as today. But nowadays, many people have a basic idea of MDA, the spots that people overfold and don't overfold, for example. So here, after hijack checks back on 10-6-2, you're on the big blind and you have queen jack. What should you be doing on the turn? If you're a regular nowadays, what's your thought process? You either have a GTO approach, you go like, okay, this hand looks like could be a check, could be like a bet, and then you think about what sizes you can use. You use an ING. Now, if you're more of the MDA guy, mass data analysis, meaning you know how population plays, maybe you go something like, okay, after hijack checks back here, I believe he's going to overfold, so I'm going for a standard 1/3 bet here because he's going to fold much. I know the data, and possibly you even do this with the intention of bluffing the river for a larger size, which is something that many MDA players do. And I'm not per se saying this is wrong here, but I'm questioning the thought process. He is overfolding here, so I'm going to bet. However, had you checked here and your opponent checks back, this could happen on the river. Now ask yourself, if you're an MDA player, do you think your opponent is going to overfold this river? Yes or no? Had you bet this hand on the turn, had you bet all of your weak hands on the turn, would you be able to exploit your opponent by overbluffing here? So the point is, if you have the knowledge that on the turn most people overfold to your bet, you will think that the bet on the turn is profitable, so you go for the bet. But is this the best thought process, or is the thought process better? If I bet here, my opponent overfolds, but if I check and my opponent checks back, he is also overfolding on the river, and then depending on your opponent, you need to choose which out of these two exploits is better. So it's not enough to just look at one street, see he overfolds. You need to compare this overfold with another possibility of making him overfold, and then decide which one is great in AV. And if both are equally good, you'd may to still want to use an ING in a spot that maybe if you just purely look, is it overfolded, I'm going to bet more, you bet pure. And also on the river here, if you have a standard size, I'm going to overbet here, pretending I have the flush. Think about which of your bet sizes is the most profitable bet, instead of just thinking whether to the bet size you usually use is your opponent overfolding. Always consider all options. Imagine you have a girlfriend and she shows you this picture and says, Miami is nice, let's go to Miami. And you say, yes, let's go, it looks beautiful. Will you go to a nice place? Of course you will. But is this the way you find the best destination in the world? Maybe you'd need to compare to Thailand and you'd see that you could have a beach vacation there and maybe even save money because it's cheaper. So if you're on a budget, you need to consider all of your options. But what's also possible is that the travel that your girlfriend wants to do is in July. And in the beginning of July, we have the main event of the WSOP. And instead of going on a travel with her, you'd rather just go and play live poker. So had you not known the dates, you would have picked a good decision, but by far not the best decision, as the best decision, of course, is to play poker. The more knowledge and the more alternatives that you have, the better your decision is going to be. So if you want to study poker, consider creating an account on GTO Wizard with my discount link. If you want to become a profitable player, consider if you have the money to invest, if getting coached is not going to increase your chance to get there. And if you already have a good rakeback deal on your side, maybe consider contacting me to see if I may not be able to offer you even more rakeback on your current side or on a different side. Hope you like the analogies, hope you got the thought process. See you in the next one.